Ayanna adjusted her cardigan sleeves nervously as she stepped off the bus and onto the stone-paved sidewalk in front of the Indigo Room. The golden lights of the upscale restaurant flickered against the fading twilight, and every part of her body screamed at her to turn around. She clutched her phone tightly in her hand, glancing once more at the message Imani had sent. "Just go in, Aya. He's already there. I swear it's not as bad as it sounds." Ayanna Brooks, 26, had once believed in the kind of love you read about in books. That belief had crumbled 2 years ago when she discovered her boyfriend of 3 years had used her savings, money she had set aside to help her ailing mother, to fund a tech startup. A month later, he left not just her, but the city, with her best friend. Since then, she had built a wall around herself, quiet mornings, numbers on spreadsheets, grocery runs for her mother, and evenings spent reading beside her in the hospital room. Love, she had decided, was a luxury people like her could no longer afford. So when Keisha, the loudest voice in the office, and the queen of passive-aggressive smirks, insisted that someone wanted to meet Ayanna, she knew something was off. "He's into quiet girls," Keisha had said with a sly grin. "Single dad, a little older, harmless, actually begged me for your number." The giggles that followed weren't subtle. Neither were the sidelong glances. Ayanna had immediately declined. Blind dates weren't her thing, especially ones arranged by someone who clearly didn't like her. But Imani, her one real friend at work, had taken her aside that afternoon, her face slightly pale. "Look, they're making a game of it," Imani admitted. "They've booked a table for you and this guy at the Indigo Room. Keisha is planning to be there. I tried to get you out of it, but she made it look like I was the one who set it up." "So, it's a joke?" Ayanna had asked flatly, her throat tightening. Imani had looked at the floor. "I think so. But the guy, he might not know. Or maybe he does. I don't know, Aya, but I swear I didn't mean for it to go this far." In the end, out of a strange mix of pride and quiet anger, Ayanna had agreed to go. She told herself it was better to show up, get it over with, and walk away with her head high. Imani had come with her to the restaurant door, then lingered outside, too ashamed to go in. Now, standing at the entrance, Ayanna inhaled deeply and stepped inside. The hostess led her past rows of soft, candlelit tables and right toward the corner where she spotted the table Keisha had reserved. As she approached, she saw him, a man already seated, but he wasn't alone. Sitting beside him in a little booster seat was a tiny girl, maybe 4 years old, with her natural hair styled in neat puffs decorated with purple butterfly clips and a plush bunny clutched tightly in her arms. Ayanna froze. That was when she heard it, snickering. To her right, just 2 tables away, Keisha sat with 3 other co-workers, all pretending to sip their drinks while glancing at their phones. One of them had their camera pointed casually in Ayanna's direction. "Oh my God," one whispered just loud enough for Ayanna to hear. "He actually brought his kid." "This is unreal. Who brings a toddler to a blind date?" Another laughed. Cringe level maximum. Ayanna's face burned. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her ears. Every instinct told her to walk away, to bolt for the door. But the little girl had looked up from her bunny and smiled at her, a smile so innocent and pure it cut straight through the embarrassment. The man stood when he saw her, pulling out the chair across from him. He had kind eyes, deep-set, tired maybe, but kind. His dark skin glowed warmly under the restaurant lights, his beard neatly trimmed. His shirt was plain, his locks pulled back neatly, not at all the creepy older guy image Keisha had painted. "Hi," he said gently. "You must be Ayanna. I'm Malik, and this," he gestured to the child, "is Zuri." Ayanna looked from him to Zuri, who gave her a tiny wave, then back to Malik. The snickering from the other table buzzed in her ears like static. She sat down, and with that one quiet act of defiance, The laughter behind her began to falter. Ayanna shifted in her seat, smoothing her skirt as she tried to steady her breathing. She kept her gaze down, but she could feel the heat of stares and snickers from the nearby table. She could hear Keisha's voice, too loud to be accidental. "I mean, really?" Keisha laughed. "She's actually sitting there with that guy and his kid." Ayanna clenched her hands under the table, forcing herself to ignore it. Across from her, Malik adjusted Zuri's little sweater as the girl munched quietly on a breadstick, humming a tune only she understood. He looked up and met Ayanna's eyes with a calm, almost apologetic smile. "Again, I'm really sorry about this," he said softly. "I know this probably isn't what you were expecting. My babysitter canceled last minute. I nearly called to cancel, too, but—" He paused, seeming unsure whether to continue, then added, "But I really didn't want to miss meeting you." Ayanna blinked, caught off guard. There was no arrogance in his voice, no defensiveness, just sincerity. "It's okay," she replied, her voice lower than she intended. Really, it wasn't. At least, not at first. The setup was humiliating, the whispers behind her insufferable. But there was something about Malik's presence that disarmed her. He was tall, yes, but not in an intimidating way. His features carried a quiet weariness, laugh lines around his eyes, a small scar near his temple, like a man who had lived 1,000 lives before sitting at this table. He wore a plain, dark button-down and jeans, nothing flashy. Everything about him felt grounded. And then there was Zuri. The little girl sat still for a moment, then reached into her tiny backpack and pulled out a small pad of paper and a purple crayon. She glanced up at Ayanna, then began to draw with intense focus. "She loves to draw," Malik said, leaning slightly closer across the table. "Mostly princesses and dinosaurs, sometimes both." Ayanna smiled despite herself. "That's a very unique combination." "She has range," Malik said with a chuckle. A few moments passed in silence. Ayanna began to relax, her shoulders lowering inch by inch. The restaurant's soft lighting cast a warm glow across the table. The clinking of forks and quiet hum of conversations filled the space around them, but Ayanna found herself focusing more on the way Malik occasionally glanced at Zuri, always gently attentive, always present. Zuri finally held up her paper and beamed. "Look," she chirped, waving it toward Ayanna. Ayanna took the picture with both hands. It was a crayon drawing of a brown girl in a long purple gown complete with sparkles and a golden crown, her hair drawn in twists, just like Ayanna's. "Is this me?" she asked, surprised. "Yes," Zuri nodded. "You look like a princess." Ayanna's throat tightened unexpectedly. "She doesn't say that often," Malik added, watching his daughter with clear affection. "Her usual favorite is a triceratops named Rosie." Ayanna laughed quietly, touched. "I'm honored." She was about to say more when movement caught her eye. One of the women from Keisha's table stood and began walking toward them, feigning casualness as she approached. "Oh, hey," the woman said with mock surprise. "I didn't know you were into this kind of thing." Ayanna's smile faltered. The woman looked directly at Zuri, then back at Ayanna. "I mean, you must know you're the kind of girl who ends up on dates with single dads, right?" "Kinda perfect, actually." Ayanna froze. Before she could respond, Malik stood up slowly, still calm, but firm. He gently placed one hand on Zuri's small shoulder and then looked the woman in the eyes. "I'm proud to be a father," he said evenly. "And I know how to respect the woman sitting across from me far more than anyone at that table seems to." The woman's smirk faltered. She blinked, scoffed, and turned away. Malik sat back down, looking across the table at Ayanna again. "Sorry about that." Ayanna didn't speak for a moment. She just looked at him. Really looked, and something inside her shifted. This wasn't a joke, not to him, not to Zuri. and maybe not to her anymore either. She folded the drawing and gently placed it into her purse like it was something precious. Dinner arrived not long after the interruption. The tension in Ayanna's chest slowly eased as the voices from the nearby table faded. Zuri, now focused on arranging her French fries into what she proudly called a crown for the princess, was a charming distraction. Ayanna couldn't help but watch Malik. He wasn't overly charming or rehearsed. There was something steady about him, quiet, sincere. He asked thoughtful questions about her day, her hobbies, even whether she preferred sunrises or sunsets. "No one's asked me that in a long time," Ayanna admitted. Malik smiled. "Sometimes the little things tell you the most." She chose sunsets. They feel like a quiet goodbye after a long day. He nodded, understanding more than she said. Then he shared something unexpected. "My wife passed away 3 years ago," he said, cutting Zuri's food. "Ovarian cancer. It was fast. She was diagnosed late." Ayanna's heart dropped. "I'm so sorry." Malik gave a soft smile. "Thanks. Zuri was just one." She remembers her mostly through stories now. He paused. "I haven't dated since. Honestly, this is my first time trying again." There was no pity in his tone, just quiet truth from someone still healing. "Then we're both first-timers," Ayanna said. "At least in a long while." She didn't explain more, but something in Malik's gaze told her he sensed there was pain behind her smile too. After dinner, Malik suggested dessert. "They have great homemade ice cream," he said, with a hopeful grin. Zuri lit up instantly. Soon they were sharing 2 small bowls, vanilla for Ayanna and Zuri, dark chocolate for Malik. Zuri giggled between bites, announcing that she was the ice cream princess, and her kingdom was sticky. Ayanna joined in as the royal knight of sprinkles. Malik, without hesitation, became Sir Napkin, keeper of clean hands. Their laughter came easily. Ayanna couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this light, this free. When the server brought the check, Ayanna instinctively reached for her wallet. She knew how this had been set up, an expensive restaurant, a joke meant to embarrass her, and Malik didn't seem like someone wealthy. But as she opened her purse, Malik gently stopped her. "Please," he said. "Let me." She hesitated. "I know what this place costs," he added with a soft smile. "I said yes because I wanted to be here with you." There was no pride in his voice, just quiet conviction. He'd seen her impulse to contribute, not from expectation, but sincerity. In that moment, something passed between them. Mutual respect, quiet trust. Outside, the night air had cooled. Malik carried Zuri in one arm as they walked Ayanna to her building. The little girl blinked sleepily, her crown of fries long forgotten. At the corner, Zuri stirred and reached out to Ayanna, wrapping her small arms around her neck. "You made Daddy smile a lot tonight," she whispered. "He smiles more when you're here." Ayanna hugged her back, heart tight. She looked at Malik. His eyes were tired but warm, grateful. They said goodbye in soft tones, unspoken promises hanging in the air. Ayanna walked the final blocks alone, Zuri's drawing still tucked safely in her purse like something sacred. When she got home, she leaned against the door and finally let the tears come, not from sadness, but from something else. Relief. Later that night, she picked up her phone and typed 2 simple words: "Thank you." A few minutes later, his reply lit up the screen. "Thank you for not walking away when you saw me with my daughter." And for the first time in what felt like forever, Ayanna went to sleep smiling. In the days that followed, Ayanna found herself smiling at her phone more than she had in years. What started with a simple thank you message became a slow but steady stream of texts. Good mornings, shared articles, silly photos of Zuri playing dress-up, and quiet confessions in the late hours of the night. On Saturday morning, Malik invited her to a children's art exhibition at the Maplewood Community Center. "Zuri's been working on something she wants to show you," he said, voice hopeful. "She'll be devastated if you're not there." The center was tucked between a library and a community garden, modest from the outside, but warm and welcoming within. Paper butterflies hung from the ceiling, walls were lined with colorful handprints, and a small band of kids was playing off-key music on plastic instruments near the entrance. Malik greeted her with Zuri on his hip, the little girl dressed in a pink tutu and tiara, clearly taking the event very seriously. "She's been talking about this all week," Malik said as he set Zuri down. They led Ayanna into the main room where dozens of children's paintings were displayed on easels. Some were stick figures, others wild splashes of color, but each piece pulsed with innocence. Zuri tugged Ayanna's hand excitedly. "This one?" "This one's mine!" The painting was simple but unmistakably heartfelt. A little brown girl in a purple dress holding hands with two adults. One figure looked like Malik. The other, with twists and a soft yellow dress, was clearly meant to be Ayanna. Scrawled across the top in chunky red letters were the words, "Mommy too." Ayanna's throat tightened. She bent down to Zuri's level. "Is that me?" Zuri nodded proudly. "You help Daddy smile." "That's what mommies do." Malik looked down, his face unreadable for a moment, then turned away slightly, pretending to fix the strap on Zuri's shoe. Ayanna could tell he was holding something back. They spent the next hour exploring the exhibit. Ayanna noticed how every teacher, every parent, every volunteer seemed to know Malik, not just as Zuri's dad, but as someone important. They shook his hand with reverence. A few even thanked him, though Ayanna wasn't sure why. Afterward, while Zuri joined a coloring circle, Ayanna and Malik stood near a coffee table in the corner, sipping lukewarm tea from paper cups. "This place is really lovely," she said. "It's been a second home for Zuri," Malik replied. "Especially after everything." "She's lucky to have you," Ayanna said. He looked at her for a long second, then gave a small shrug. "I just do what I can." Something about his tone stirred a quiet curiosity in Ayanna. She didn't want to pry, but there were details that didn't quite add up. He always paid for meals but never bragged. His apartment, which she had briefly seen from a photo, was modern and minimalist. He dressed simply, but everything he wore was well made. His words were humble, yet his manner, his quiet confidence, suggested a man used to responsibility, to leadership. As they left the center, Zuri asleep in his arms, Ayanna noticed Malik's phone buzz. He unlocked it to check a message, and for the briefest second, Ayanna's eyes caught something, an email address displayed at the top of the screen. It wasn't just any email. It had the domain of a prominent investment firm she'd heard about on the news, one of the biggest in the country, the kind that only executives and board members used. Malik noticed her glance. Their eyes met. She didn't say anything. He smiled gently. "You saw it, didn't you?" Ayanna hesitated, then nodded. He didn't flinch, didn't deflect. "I try to keep that part of my life quiet," he said calmly. "People tend to treat you differently once they know." "You're a CEO," she said quietly. "Yes," he answered. "Technically, I'm the founder of the firm that funds this center, among other things." Ayanna looked back at the building, then at him, speechless. Malik shifted Zuri slightly in his arms, then looked at Ayanna again, softly, almost with gratitude. "You looked at me like I was just a dad trying to keep it together," he said. "And that's the most valuable thing anyone's done for me in years." Ayanna sat at her kitchen table, staring into a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The only sound in the room was the low hum of the refrigerator. Yet inside her mind, a storm raged. Doubt, fear, shame. The more time she spent with Malik and Zuri, the more the weight in her chest grew. Malik was kind, present, generous, without ever boasting. And Zuri, sweet, bright-eyed Zuri, had found her way into Ayanna's guarded heart like sunlight through cracked blinds. But even as they grew closer, Ayanna couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. Malik was the founder of a major investment firm, a man who quietly funded community centers and moved in circles far beyond her world. She was just a junior accountant with no savings, a sick mother, and a past shaped by betrayal. He deserved someone polished, accomplished, not someone who had been used, discarded, and left picking up the pieces. And Zuri deserved someone who didn't flinch when she accidentally called her mommy. So Ayanna began to pull away. She answered Malik's texts a little later each time. She made excuses to avoid dinner. She skipped their Sunday plans with no offer to reschedule. She told herself it was for the best, that she was protecting them from her inevitable shortcomings. Then came the final blow. Keisha, as always, found a way to ruin what she didn't understand. Somehow, she'd found out about Ayanna and Malik, maybe through gossip or a glimpse in the park. One morning, Ayanna walked into the office to find stairs following her like shadows. When she checked her phone, she saw the post, a picture of her crouched beside Zuri, tying the little girl's shoe. The caption, "Some women will play house with anyone just to feel needed." Cringe. The comments were worse. Laughing emojis, snide remarks, fake "hope you're okay" messages from co-workers who had never spoken a kind word to her. That night, Ayanna couldn't sleep. By morning, she had drafted her resignation and handed it in without a word. She told no one except Imani. When Imani showed up at her apartment days later with takeout in hand and fire in her eyes, Ayanna tried to pretend she was asleep on the couch. Imani didn't buy it. "You quit your job," she demanded, dropping the food on the table. "You ghosted Malik? Are you seriously running from the only good thing that's happened to you in years?" Ayanna sat up slowly. "You wouldn't understand." "Then make me," Imani snapped. Ayanna's voice cracked. "He's everything I'm not. Generous, powerful, stable. I'm just someone he feels sorry for. And Zuri, if I let her love me, I'll just end up hurting her too." Imani stared at her. "He never once treated you like a pity project. He sees you. He chose you. And Zuri? That girl lights up when you walk in the room." Ayanna looked away. Imani's voice softened, but her words hit hard. "You're not afraid of failing, Ayanna. You're afraid of being loved, for real. No strings, no conditions. That terrifies you." Ayanna said nothing, but when Imani left, she cried for the first time in weeks. The next evening there was a knock at the door. When Ayanna opened it, Malik stood there, Zuri nestled against his shoulder, her pink bunny dangling from her hand. He didn't speak at first. His eyes met hers, searching, calm, steady. "I didn't come to argue," he said gently. "I just needed to see you. One last time, if that's all you'll let me have." Ayanna couldn't find her voice. Her eyes burned. Zuri squirmed from his arms and stepped forward, holding out a folded piece of paper. "This is for you," she said, placing it in Ayanna's hands. "It's our family." "You're in it." With trembling fingers, Ayanna unfolded the drawing. There they were, Zuri, Malik, and her, drawn in vibrant crayon, all holding hands beneath a rainbow that arched clumsily over their heads. The tears came then, sudden and uncontrollable. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she was falling apart or finally coming back together. The ballroom buzzed with the chatter of hundreds of women, the air filled with anticipation and perfume. The Women Who Rise conference was one of the city's most celebrated events, an annual gathering spotlighting stories of strength, healing, and hope. Ayanna hadn't planned on attending, not this year, but Imani had insisted. "You need to be reminded of who you are," she'd said firmly, handing Ayanna the ticket. "And maybe of what you still deserve." So Ayanna had come, dressed simply, sitting near the back, clutching a program she hadn't even glanced at. The MC's voice cut through her thoughts. "And now we're honored to introduce our final speaker of the day, a man whose quiet contributions have changed lives across this city, the founder of the Hope Sparks Foundation, Mr. Malik Okoye." Ayanna's fingers went cold. Applause thundered around her, but she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Malik walked onto the stage in a navy suit, crisp and calm. But when his eyes swept the crowd and landed on her, he paused just for a moment. Then he smiled. "Good afternoon," he began. "I'll keep this brief because this conference isn't about me. It's about you. All of you. The women who keep moving forward even when the world tells you to stop." Malik's voice was steady, but there was a softness to it, a vulnerability she recognized. "I started Hope Sparks after I lost my wife," he said. "I needed a reason to keep showing up, to stay grounded, for my daughter, for myself. What I didn't expect was to find something that would spark again in me." He glanced down at his notes, then closed the folder. "And sometimes life surprises you in the most unexpected ways." And then, without warning, he stepped down from the stage. The ballroom hushed. Every eye followed him as he walked past rows of seats toward the very back of the room, toward her. Ayanna's breath caught. He stopped in front of her, and in one smooth motion, Malik dropped to one knee. The silence was deafening. He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it, not to reveal a giant diamond, but a simple, elegant gold band, understated, meaningful. He looked up at her, eyes shining. "Ayanna," he said, voice steady, low. "The day they made a joke out of my daughter, you sat down anyway. You saw past the setup, past the whispers. You made a little girl feel seen, and you made me believe again." Ayanna's eyes filled. "You turned their cruelty into the kindest moment of my life. And since then, every moment with you has only proven what I already knew that night." He took a breath. "Ayanna, would you be the first person to call me husband again since the day I lost everything?" The room was still, not a cough, not a whisper. Ayanna pressed her hand to her mouth, overcome. She stood on shaking legs, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't speak. She couldn't. But she nodded, once, twice, and that was enough. The room erupted, cheers, applause, cries of joy. People stood to their feet, clapping as Malik rose and wrapped his arms around her. Just then, from the side aisle, a tiny figure ran forward, pink tutu fluttering. "Zuri!" She launched herself into Ayanna's arms, burying her face in her side. "Does this mean," Zuri asked through a giggly tear mix, "I have a mommy now?" Ayanna knelt down, arms wrapping around the little girl. "Yes, sweetheart," she whispered, voice trembling. "You do." Malik crouched beside them, resting a hand on Ayanna's back, the other on Zuri's tiny shoulder. And in the middle of the crowd, under stage lights and applause, 3 people held each other, not as strangers bound by coincidence, but as something closer, something whole, something called family. The little house on Maple Lane was always filled with light, not just from the wide windows or the afternoon sun that spilled across the wooden floors, but from laughter, from stories told around the dinner table, from the quiet joy of 3 people, learning how to belong to one another. With Malik's encouragement, Ayanna took a leap she never imagined. Together, they launched a free art program for underprivileged children at the same community center where Zuri's Mommy 2 painting had once hung. The program was simple. paint. Draw a dream. For kids who had seen too much, been through too much, and needed a place to simply be. Malik didn't just fund it. He stepped back. "This is yours," he told her one morning, handing her the full project folder. "You have the heart for it, the vision. I'm just the guy who signs the checks." And so, in a corner of the world once marked by pain, Ayanna found a kind of healing she never thought possible, through art, through children, through love quietly lived day by day. 1 year later, they returned to the indigo room. Same corner table by the window where a cruel joke had started it all. Ayanna sat down slowly, her wedding ring catching the light. "Can't believe it's been a year," she murmured. Malik reached across the table, lacing his fingers with hers. "Feels like yesterday." "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "About how it all started?" Malik looked around the room for a moment, then back at her. "Sometimes. But not the way you'd think." "Do you ever feel angry that they tried to make me the punchline of a joke?" Malik's eyes softened. He squeezed her hand gently. "No," he said without hesitation. "Because if they hadn't, I wouldn't have found you." He smiled then, genuine, full. "If it took a stupid, petty joke to lead me to the most sincere thing I've ever known, then I can't hate how it started." Ayanna blinked against the sting in her eyes. "Sometimes the best things in life come wrapped in the worst disguises," he said. She laughed quietly, brushing her thumb along his. "And sometimes," she whispered, "you find forever at a table meant for heartbreak." Under the soft glow of the same lights, at the same table, what began as a setup meant to humiliate had become the most beautiful beginning of all.